Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind.
Well, good morning and hello, kids, and welcome to season 4 and episode number 583 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Da 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 da! 100% Canadian, kids and cubs. Get your stuff here. Buy from us. I am your host, the Eager Beaver. Pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, hey. And with me is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and CanadianTarot.com. As you can see, I'm at the Ottawa Beaver Lodge. I'm the boss here, just making sure we're doing the job right. So, Mr. Grizzly, how's your mental health today, sir?
All things being equal, I think I'm okay. Had a strange night. Wasn't sleepless, went to bed at a normal hour, but I didn't go to bed. I fell asleep on the couch and I woke up at 2 a.m. and I just said, yeah, I'm comfortable. I'm not moving.
I know that feeling.
It's like, if I get up and go to bed, I'm not going to get back to sleep. So I just rolled over and fell back to sleep. So,
yeah. Last night, I actually made it to the bed.
Oh.
Did not fall asleep on the magical sleep couch before I got to bed. So I got a bit of a full night, and thank you, kids and cubs, for that little bit of patience on the later start, because as you know, your queen beaver has a bit of a cold, and took an extra 15 minutes today of sleep when the alarm rang. It was just a little too early, but feeling better than I was yesterday. And the decongestions have taken effect, and therefore there will not be too much need for me to be bringing Kleenex to my face during the show like yesterday. Oh, man. All right, kids and cubs. Well, yesterday it was debate night in Ontario. Now, actually, it's been debate weekend in Ontario because there was actually Northern Issues debate that took place a little earlier, Friday afternoon it was. And it was actually pretty good as debates, to be totally honest. I've watched the Northern debate before, and sometimes it can. I don't want to say it could be too local, because that's the whole point. But there's not. How would I put it? The candidates might often superficially speak to certain broader subjects that they know about in the South and whatnot, and do their best to try and adapt it to the North with a sentence or two like this. But you can tell who actually knows the North by the way that they talk about the subjects when they get to the debate, right? When it's all like surface level, and it's like, well, you could have said this in Windsor too, like this. Or if you say everything, says, but all this, but it's worse in the North. or it's harder in the north, or more expensive in the north. Uh, the- you, you didn't really do the homework. So, um, so it's nice that one to see who shows up and who's done what. And then last night they had the major network one, the one that pretty much everybody tunes into. I do not know. There was a time where there was a debate in French and Ontario, and I don't know if there is going to be one. But I remember, I think a couple of elections ago, they sort of had one, but each part nobody spoke French, and each party just sent a representative. So we heard people debating, but for none of the parties, it was the leader. So it's kind of interesting. Uh, I don't know if there is one of those scheduled. If there is, I haven't heard about it, which is kind of interesting.
I don't know.
But there should be one.
Well,
There should.
I assume you watched the whole thing, did you?
I did.
Yeah, I couldn't. I had to tap out after a few minutes. I've watched highlights of it, and then, of course, Doug Ford skips out on the post-debate press conference.
Twice now.
Yeah.
He did it for
Don't
the
ask him
Northern
any
Ontario.
questions, right? He'll run away.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, I mean, here's the thing with him, right? All the polls say that he's leading. And while it's not a situation exactly like last time where Del Duca and Horvath are bashing on each other all the time, there's a little bit of it, of course. But I mean, that's just partisan politics. But it's not like they're trying to take each other down for second, right? In the northern debate, there was actually a moment where it seemed that they were actually Bonnie Crombie and Marit Stiles were actually working together.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of, oh, really? And then they turn around and they rope Mike Schreiner and say, hey, Mike, how about you there? He's, oh, yeah, me too. I'm in on that. Let me get a slice. So in that sense, it was better than last time, particularly the northern one. The northern one also had more substance than last time. It's like some of the candidates actually tried to do the assignment, which was kind of refreshing. One candidate did not, though. And I think we saw it yesterday, too. One candidate showed up for the debates, that joke we keep on making. Like the kid that has a book report but didn't really read the book. So there were covers, and there was a story, and there were characters, there was intrigue, and somebody wanted something and they couldn't get it, and they had to struggle, and then they almost weren't going to get it, but then something happened, and then they were able to get it, and then everybody was happy. It was a good book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was pretty much Doug Ford.
Ill-prepared as always. He just doesn't do his homework. I think Bonnie Crombie summed it up in the debate when she said, and I'm going to quote her here. She says, "You don't get the plight of real people because you were raised privileged with a silver spoon in your mouth. You didn't have to work for anything. You had a company handed to you, Doug. So you don't understand how expensive things are today. I bet you couldn't tell me what the cost of eggs are."
And here's the thing, right? For that type of thing, okay, especially right now, right, where everybody's talking about the price of eggs.
Mm-hmm.
This has been the thing like for the last year and a half, right? Oh my God, look at the price of eggs.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing, this is an old classic thing. Back in the day, it was like price of milk or the price of bread. So if you wanted to say that a politician was out of touch, you suggested that they didn't know those things, or you point blank asked them how much it was. I guess, and before you did, if you were smart, you made sure that you took a stop at the grocery store, like maybe the day
Check
before
the price.
Prices. Maybe. So Bonnie Crump, when somebody does that, like this, you make sure you know the price of eggs.
Mm-hmm.
Because if somebody throws that in your face, it's like, yes, I do. I just bought some yesterday. It was $3.29 a carton. Thank you very much. Doug Ford did not do that.
No, of course not.
Doug Ford does not know the price of eggs.
Nor does he care. Doesn't matter to him. Doesn't matter to him. It doesn't affect his personal budget.
Nope. And the whole debate was like that. So Doug Ford's plan, like I said, we called this for the entire campaign, was to run on Trump, 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 tariffs, tariffs, tariffs
Mm-hmm.
for 30-something straight days. and hope that would work. I'm guessing he was hoping that the tariffs would have been imposed already so that he can run around and say, look, now I'm doing this, now I'm doing this. But Trump said they were coming and they're not coming, and they're coming, they're not coming. And so Ford doesn't actually have anything to react to show his great leadership and all this type of stuff. We do have a trip to Washington, D.C., where he was the chair of the Council of the Federation, where the trip appears to have been pretty much a bust, even though the premiers are doing their best to say that it was indeed useful. Because, the deputy chief of staff does talk to the chief of staff, and the chief of staff is one of only 5 people that has the presidency here the entire time. But in a normal world, that would be true, but in a world where you have the TV president who has the attention span of a gnat, that means squat. Because it was clear that, judging by the tweets that happened after, that their goal and their mission was simply to just be there and say, well, Trump says this, because when it was all done, it's like, no, we never agreed that you weren't going to be the 51st state.
Mm-hmm.
Was the thing that they had to say in public, because Lord knows we can't contradict Davos. So, yeah, he doesn't. The debate here is to tell you about what they plan to do next mandate. And Doug Ford did one of his usual rhetorical tricks. So when we saw him in the press conferences, right, it's sort of like, ask him a question. It's like sort of like touch on the thing a little bit, sort of reject it, deny it, reject the premise, pretend it's not true, and then pivot away hard, ungracefully, very awkwardly, and clumsily to another subject. And then because you don't really have much to say, then start throwing in a line about like 5 or 6 or other different subjects along the way. Because Doug Ford's debate pivot is sort of dismiss the thing, or sometimes don't even acknowledge the question, just into whatever, and list a whole bunch of past spending, past investments, and talk about things you did that didn't get the job done, because that's why we're in the mess we are now, and pat yourself on the back for it. I invested more money in healthcare than ever before. We built 3,500 new beds. We got this. I invested $1.8 billion. You did all that, and the system still sucks, Doug. So don't tell me about what you did that got us to the point where we are now that we're complaining about. Tell us what you have to do to fix it. And he's got absolutely nothing to fix it. He's got no plans.
Well, maybe some private healthcare practices. Maybe
Yeah, but he can't say that.
Weston Family Health Centers, I'm sure.
But he can't say that.
No, I know. And when it comes to education, class sizes, as we all know, are huge. But according to this, he's actually reduced funding by $1,500 per student.
Since COVID.
That's
Since COVID, when the kids need the additional resources to catch up since COVID.
Yeah.
Below the national provincial average. $1,500 below the national average.
Yeah, we're the lowest funded province in the country when it comes to education. And didn't he want to model the curriculum on that of, was it Kentucky or Alabama? Remember that a few years back? I think it was Alabama, who actually had the lowest scores in the 48 contiguous states.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go after the worst possible system we can find. Let's implement that one. The one that's failing miserably. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Keep them stupid and keep them drunk and high.
Well, and there's a theme there, right? To keep them stupid. A lot of the contenders made the point that on post-secondary education, which right now is a mess because they chose not to fund it from core funding. If you're looking at that, it would appear that even though Doug Ford had announced that he would give a certain amount of money to colleges and universities for what they were going to be lacking, or just gave more funding in general. As a matter of course, the funding that they got this year, the additional funding, doesn't match or cover the amount that they're losing from the temporary immigration camp.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're seeing these stories in the news about colleges like canceling tons of programs, like 40 programs in 1 year, that's Doug Ford who did that. Now he'll blame the feds,
Of course.
and he'll blame the immigrants. But if you start the dial in history when the issue started, and not when Doug Ford decides to choose history, the premiers demanded that the people remain here because there was a staffing shortage.
Mm-hmm.
And they did not build the housing
No, they
for
didn't.
the people that were here.
And Doug
Then, when the
reinstituted the shopping mall colleges.
yes,
So they'd enroll 10,000 people in a college that could fit maybe 200. So these people get enrolled, they get their money, they get here, then they have no place to live, and there's no actual classes to attend to.
mm,
So
yep,
that was Doug Ford who reinstituted that. So thanks,
yep,
Doug, making us
or they
better by the moment.
yep, or as we know, that has happened to my Beaver sweetie. He had some students in class that weren't doing their exams, and turns out, well, they were working at an en route for 14 to 16 hours, about 2 hours away from the actual university, and they were not allowed to leave for their exam or their tests or their classes
Yeah.
by their employers. So the he's not funding schools, he's not funding post-secondary, and he's not funding healthcare. Right? The people were here because the premiers demanded they be here because of the staffing shortage, but then they didn't build houses for them.
Yeah. You're on your own.
And then, well, we had a busting out homelessness problem and addiction problem. And then some provinces asked the feds to change some of the rules with regard to possession so that they could use new methods, proven methods, to try and combat it. That had some unintended consequences. And again, they blamed the feds. Now, you got the federal conservatives complaining that there are allegedly 500,000 immigrants here somewhere in Canada that the federal government has lost track of, all people that the premiers asked to be here. And the federal government obliged. And now they're complaining that post-secondary is a mess, but y'all didn't fund it. And in Ontario, post-secondary, where all the provinces, their funding of post-secondary reaches about 60% of the costs, and the rest you raise from tuition and all that kind of stuff. In Ontario, it's 30%. So in this debate last night, Doug Ford was so ill prepared that he actually needed a safety blanket line.
Mm.
And a safety blanket line was, well, if you trust any of these three with the economy, gee, we're going to take a slip and slide down the hill. We do this, but in order to have these hospitals, you have to have a good economy. And with these three, you can't have a good economy. Well, you know what else you can't have a good economy with, Doug? People that are not healthy and educated. You won't fund post-secondary. How long do you think this wonderful economy you're patting yourself on the back for is going to last? Another 10 years, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
If you care so much about the economy, Doug, you're going to make sure that you have a workforce that's healthy and educated. That's the last thing you're doing. He ran to that line about in different formats and variations about 5 or 6 times, 4 times, I think, within the first 30 or 40 minutes. Doug Ford, what's your position on education? Well, I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. And, for education to be properly funded, you need a good economy, and these people will torch the economy. Vote for me.
The guy who is giving $100 million to Elon Musk after he said he'd tear up the contract and said he reinstituted it when all he did was just blow smoke.
Yeah. So, how to put it? This guy, as he's pulling the bricks out of the foundation of the province, keeps going to a microphone. And geez, shucks, folks. I'm getting it done for you. But he's not. He's not. You can't have a province that funds below the national average on regular education, that funds below the national average on post-secondary education, and funds below average on healthcare, and still be the engine of the nation. Over the long run, you can coast on that for a while on the past investments, like we did on housing. Mike on reminding us that the Ontario got out of all significant public and affordable housing in 1995.
Yeah, we've had
here we are 30 years later, and we're noticing it.
Lowest housing starts in the country in 70 years, I think.
Well, that's too. Not only do we not have the public housing, but just the general housing start. The guy who's been saying for the last 3 years, well, you got to build the homes, is not building the homes. He's getting the money. The money is going out the door, but the homes are not being built.
Mm-hmm.
Education's not being paid for. He's building facilities, but he can't staff them. And then pats himself on the back for having created 3,500 beds. 3,500 beds without a nurse is 0 beds. It's a snow job. It's a snow job.
Mm-hmm.
Doug Ford showed up at these debates. But all I have to do is talk about the threat of Trump, and talk about all the past things I've did, not say a damn word about the future.
And I'll get reelected.
And if I can get through 1 hours and a half of this, I'll get elected. Is it his performance and his presence was an insult to Ontarians?
Oh, yeah.
He had 2 opportunities to speak to us, did not come prepared, had nothing to say, tried to skate through. And then at both times, when there's a scrum afterwards, so that the media can ask him the questions that the people have, he skipped on them. And all his local candidates are skipping on debates. There's running a frontrunner's campaign. Right? That's what Mark Carney's doing right now. Don't reveal too much. Little drips. But you're still putting something out there. If not in terms of quantity, right? If you're looking at the liberal leadership race right now, you look at the difference between Christopher Freeland and Mark Carney. Christopher Freeland is putting out tons of policy, like just trying to be relevant, just trying to be seen, and nobody's paying attention. Right? Mark Carney's doing a little interview here, dropping a little thing here, 2% to NATO here. This is my carbon plan here. Just big lines. There will be a tax cut. There will be something.
I am deeply concerned that Ford will get reelected. I am deeply concerned. It just means that, hey, you know what? If that happens, we deserve it because we're stupid enough to vote for him. Or not vote, whatever the quick case may be. I'm like, things are not looking good.
They're not looking good at all. Unfortunately.
They really aren't. And he was miserable in that debate, but he's still probably going to win.
Yeah. He looked like he'd rather be, everything suggested there, I would rather be anywhere in the world but here. The lack of answers, the lack of preparation, the lack of engagement, the fact he didn't take it seriously, the fact that he had absolutely nothing to say on any subject, whether it was health, education, the environment, anything about the future. Nothing. There was no, over the course of the next 4 years, if you give me another mandate, I will do. The only thing about that was, well, I'll be there for the entire time Trump is there to protect Ontario. By the way, in the first debate, he didn't do it in the second, but in the first debate, if I had to take a drink every time he said the words protect Ontario, I would still be shit-faced from Friday.
Yeah.
I would.
Mm-hmm.
Because he didn't do that. Now, in the first debate, how would I put it? You could tell it was a pre-bait. Right? They practiced their lines, tried to get in a couple of hits. Some of them were recycled for the second night. Some of them were new. Some of them saved. But they're trying out some stuff, see what lands, see what doesn't work. Then they get the feedback, from all their handlers and whatnot. They come back on the second date. I have to say that if you watched both debates, Bonnie Crombie improved incredibly.
I think so.
To the second debate.
From what I saw, I think
Yeah.
so. I couldn't watch the whole thing. I was like, oh, I can't take this.
Yeah. But from the first and second debate, improved incredibly. Now, caveat, improved greatly still doesn't mean was fantastic. She was better than I had expected her to be, considering all the negative hype. And while she, I guess, exceed very low expectations based on everybody punching down.
Mm-hmm.
She's just Doug Ford in heels, and so in that sense, did better and improved from night one to night two, and delivery and stance and like little things that she was doing. Because like you finished your intervention, well, the camera's still on, so you can't just finish your intervention. Right? Do that. It's like hold the gaze of the camera. Camera's gonna pan away at some point or cut to someone else. But it's like make sure when you finish making that big point, and that's why I'm going to deliver for you. Stay looking at the camera. That's why I'm going to deliver for you. Doesn't work, right? And sometimes the camera would pan away, and then you'd see the body she'd like pull away or do something, right? So she didn't quite fully nail it on the second one, the telegenics of it, like this. But there was a marked improvement. Like she had taken notes, she had gotten notes, and she integrated it into her performance. So she showed she could learn on the fly, which was cool. Merritt Stiles didn't really need much help with that. She is telegenic like you cannot believe.
She really is.
A lot of people have made the comments on various shows. I agree. The camera loves her.
It does.
Really does. Both Merritt Stiles and Bonnie Crombie, fortunately for them, have pitches of voice that make it difficult for men to say. It's like nails on a chalkboard. Doug Ford, however, has that voice.
Oh, yes.
When he gets into that whiny pleading thing, I gotta build the homes, guys. He has that nails on the chalkboard voice, actually.
We're building homes. No, actually, Doug, you're not building a damn thing. Private contractors are building homes, and you're making sure the money gets funneled into those developers' pockets. But you're not building a damn thing. The province of Ontario is not building a home. None. Zero. Private contractors are. And nobody seems to talk about that. Why is that? We're building homes. No, Doug, you are not. The province of Ontario isn't. It's private, for-profit developers who are the ones who largely got you elected and got pissed when you backed out of the Greenbelt.
Now you owe them.
Yeah. Now you're on the hook.
Bill is
Now
due.
you're in their pocket.
Yeah. Speaking of that, without going into it, if you're following what's going on in the United States with New York City Mayor Eric Adams,
Yeah.
jeez, that's a little scary. And I'm pretty sure that's a tactic that Doug Ford's not against using. I'm just saying. So, in the Northern debate on Friday, I was about 30 minutes into it, like this, when I came to the conclusion that Doug Ford, like, this is the kid in class book report. Now, there was a first question in the debate on the proper funding of municipalities. And in this one, Bonnie Crombie got off to an actual pretty good start and owned Doug Ford's ass pretty good on it. She came out swinging, which is good. You need to do. Again, the delivery wasn't always smooth, but she really did come out swinging. Mr. Guzzi, I don't know if you have the. Whoops, sorry. That's volume. I don't know if you have the, yeah, I know. I don't know if you have the. I sent you two links. One for the Northern debate.
Hang on just a sec. Yeah, I got the Northern debate.
Okay, so bring up the Northern debate, if you would.
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay. Let's go to. It's probably going to be about 30. Is that it? Is this the actual name?
I got the seat.
Sorry.
Pack.
No. Sorry. Tech is really screwing with me today, man. I asked them to bring up the Northern debate, and they brought up the regular debate. So that's why my timestamps are not.
No, I've got this one here. It says Ontario Party leaders take debate on Northern issues, February 14th. So
Yes. But on my screen, that's not the one. The one that I'm sifting through to look for the timestamp for you is brought up the regular debate, unfortunately. It's going to take me a couple of seconds to get that timestamp for you. But Bonnie Crombie pretty much owned them on the first one. It didn't seem to rattle him at that point. There was one point in the first debate where he got a little rattled. Yesterday, he was more rattled more often, visibly. So they got to him. So they moved from the proper funding of municipalities to the housing issue, and Ford in the Northern Ontario debate was an utter disaster on the housing issue. And on that one, which if I can find the other clip, was the second clip I would like to show you from the Northern one. Marit Stiles on housing. I do not know why this clip wasn't all over the web. Should have been, but she literally, when you go to a self-defense course, and you just like kick him in the nuts, and then when he goes, knee him in the forehead, and he goes, and then throat punch him. She did the political equivalent of that. I was like, whoa, Marit, hold some back, man. Leave some for the rest of them. So those were probably like the two biggest and best moments. Then you saw Crombie and Stiles sort of working together after the housing issue, and that they pulled Mike Schreiner in, as I mentioned. But at the end of that section, Marit Stiles turned around and landed one on Crombie. Now, normally, I do not approve of this. But it was a clean shot. It was a fair shot. It was short. It was sweet. Just at the end of it, after Bonnie Crombie going, yeah, me too. Oh, yeah, Bonnie. And then boom. It's kind of a boss move. It did kind of just like a boss. I have to say, I was like, damn, girl. Okay. I see you, player. So Merritt Styles, in my opinion, yes, if we're talking about who won the debate, and Evan Scrimshaw made a very, very good point in an article of his on that. When we're talking about the debate itself, there is a difference between saying someone won the debate on substance and someone won it on style, won the night.
Mhm.
Right? I'm an actual debater. As kids who've watched the show, right? I was on the national team back in '92. So when I listen to a debate, I listen to it primarily for the substance, because, but given I have a PR background, I also look at the style. So usually when I do the analysis, because we're an information-based show that promotes political and media literacy, when I do my analysis of the debates, it really is on, did a politician meet your need to have the best information possible, to cast the most informed vote possible? And then, I will tell you, but, on style and substance, what came across, and how things were carried, and how, what wins. Merritt Styles did win the first debate. Now, it's not a blowout. There was every time you hear debate, there was no knockout punch. Yes, that's the same thing. But even then, it wasn't like a blowout win. But overall, over the course of the night, substance, consistency, presentation, ability to be engaged, number of questions actually answered directly versus skated around, that type of stuff, Merritt Styles did well. Bonnie Crombie also did well on substance. Delivery was an issue. Mike Schreiner, surprisingly, because last election period, when we saw him in the debates, we were very, very impressed. He is no less impressive in that when there's a file in which he knows his stuff, he really knows his stuff. And it's clear that he's done his homework. He's brought the plans. He'll tell you about the future. And when you get Mike Schreiner and Doug Ford in these debates, side by side moments, again, it becomes really painfully obvious who the serious candidate is and who isn't. Right? But Doug Ford thinks he's got it like that. Probably does. So there's nothing about Doug Ford's performance that will displease anybody who already votes Doug Ford. But it's Doug Ford. Big smile through the veneers, come, give a slap on the back. Have a burger and a pop at my Ford Fest.
Essentially, yeah.
Oh, and the attacks and the counterattacks weren't sustained and cutting enough to bring him down a peg, unfortunately. But if you are someone who, like me, who just objectively sits down in front of a debate and says, okay, inform me, his entire time on stage, both debates, was an insult to anybody who came to get some information. If you actually care about the future of the province and your future in it, Doug Ford has nothing for you. So vote for me and see what you'll get. Literally.
That didn't work out very good last time, so maybe we should not do that.
Right?
I mean, look, we're still trying to recover from the current Ford government, let alone the previous Ford government. if we vote him in again, which it looks like it's going to happen, it looks like the people of Ontario are going to be ambivalent or ambiguous or just apathetic and not turn up to vote, and he'll get reelected again,
Mm.
and we'll deserve it. We'll deserve it. If we put him in
According,
power, we deserve what we get.
yeah. Now, of course, I've been hearing other stuff because when we talk about public opinion polling, right, we look at the regular pollsters, the Ipsos, the Ecos, and whatnot. But there's also AI-based polling. So there's something in Ontario called Poly. I think it's Advanced Systems Incorporated, or a company like that uses it. And what Poly does is it goes all over the web and scans all social media and comment sections and whatnot. What are people talking about? Does it have a negative trend? Does it have a positive trend? What are the themes? In which regions of the province they can really break this down. According to the person who comes and talks about what Poly has found, there is more engagement, especially in the first 2 weeks of the race, by the Ontario voter. Apparently, the Ontario voters are actually more engaged and in tune to this particular election than the previous one. So
this is good, but
that means
see how it turns out.
Right, exactly. But it seems that is indeed the case. Now, after the Northern debate, or around the time of the Northern debate, it was looking, polling-wise, that there was a bit of a chink in the Conservative armor. But that kind of disappeared like the next day. So it really does look like, unless something major happens over the next 10 days, we're going to see very little of Doug Ford over the next 10 days. The candidates are not already not showing up to debates, and he's showing up to debates saying the least amount possible, not venturing anything new, and not even showing up for the scrums afterwards. So Doug Ford is running his provincial campaign like what the federal Conservatives do to him in a federal campaign, except he's the one that stuffed himself in the basement freezer this time around. So he's going to play Premier on TV, right? He's not going to go full into hiding. You're going to see clips of him at a campaign stop and yucking it up and get the images and whatnot like this. But he's going to skate by every answer to every question from now on. Like this. Try not to take questions. I mean, they have the new media policy, right? To not more than 6 questions and all that. So you can try to take as little questions as possible as soon as the press conference is over. His theme music come on so nobody can ask questions. He's just really going to try and smother any opportunity for him to be on any type of live mic and say something other than a Doug Ford platitude, folks. It's going to smother that with a wet blanket, a very heavy wet blanket. So Doug Ford's campaign is over as far as he's concerned. He's basically the 8, 9, 10, I'm out of here. Did the 2 debates, that's it for the rest of the 10 days. Just, try to say as little as possible in front of an open mic and hope I don't screw up and that you'll still vote for me. Not particularly impressive here. In the Northern debate, they talked about things like forestry, for example, because it's a huge industry up there. Ford did better on the forestry issue, because whenever it comes to like ripping something out of the earth and put it on a truck, well, the Doug Ford, that's his comfort zone, right? Building a road, doing something for cars, or pulling something out of the ground. That's Doug Ford's range. Don't ask him to stretch beyond that. But Mayor Style still landed a couple of uppercuts on it. And Bonnie Crombie was a decent backup on this one on forestry, but didn't particularly own the issue in either way, right? And surprisingly, Schreiner, as we were mentioning, wasn't particularly good on forestry.
Yeah, a bit of a surprise there, eh?
Yeah, I expected more. Then they talked about mental health and addictions. And Bonnie Crombie in the Northern debate scored very big there because she was able to speak to it from a personal perspective. She has a history, I think, as the child of someone that had addiction. So was able to speak from that personal perspective, allowed an opportunity to see someone as a real person. which was nice because with all the money that the Ontario PCs have put into finding her, I mean, she's basically a caricature if you didn't know her from before. So she was able to bring a human aspect at that point here. And oddly enough, where Mike Schreiner failed to shine on forestry, he really shined on the addictions and mental health issue, showing that the Greens are more than an environment party. But you could tell in his response, especially when you compare it to Doug Ford's, that he really, really, really and sincerely cares about this issue enough to know his stuff.
He genuinely does, and every time I've seen him discuss either addictions or ODSP or effectively anybody who is on the margins of society, he knows what he's talking about, and he does care.
Yeah.
And if he and this is the impression I get. If he doesn't care, then he's an Oscar-worthy actor.
Yes.
Because his empathy comes across, right? So he genuinely cares, as far as I'm concerned, from what I've seen of him. And I think this is a good man who is trying to do the right thing. Unfortunately, I don't believe he'll ever form government. No. Unfortunately.
Now, when it comes to stuff, and Mr. Grizzly here makes a good point, and I really want you to keep in mind what he said and hold it close. Because when it comes to stuff like addictions, mental health, homelessness, encampments, the child welfare system, children with autism, domestic violence, those types of things. There's a way when you talk about these subjects, there's a vocabulary, there's a tone, when we're having these discussions, there's a culture to having these, right? In any community, right? If you talk about deaf people and you talk about deaf culture, gay culture, there is survivor culture.
Oh, yes.
Yes. When you're in that culture, there's just a flavor, a color, and a texture that goes with the words and how you put them together to talk about them. Like this. And if you know, you know. Mike Schreiner knows. He speaks like he knows these issues. So I will take whatever he has to say on these types of things to the bank. Now, Schreiner in this topic was literally put side by side with Ford because they had the topic where they each gave their positions, and then they had an opportunity like for little debates, 1 or 2 minutes with each other. And on this one, Ford had the right tone for the people who like his shtick. Lock them up, throw them away, doing this kind of stuff. We got to get tough on this stuff. But juxtaposed right after Schreiner had just spoken, like a very, very caring Canadian, rather than a Republican, well, kind of made Ford look downright heartless. The juxtaposition. Speaking one right after, Ford looked completely and totally heartless on the issue. The final question that they had in the NOR book. Sorry, Mr. Grizzly?
No, I'm agreeing with you.
I
have a couple points I want to bring up here, but continue. Please continue.
Then the final question that they had in the Northern debate, and this one was rushed for time because some people talked too long, was the perpetual one that they have in any Northern debate about road safety up there. Nobody was particularly strong on the answer, but by reading a list of past accomplishments, on that one, Ford might have distracted from the lack of achievement or anything new in his answer. So overall, my closing impressions from that one was that Schreiner was the only leader with an already published and costed platform, and that is still the case. He released it, I think, around the 11th or the 12th. Everybody else is saying that they will have one, but his is actually costed and released with enough time for you to actually consult it and ask a few questions. before you vote. So, but he knows his stuff, and he gained respect from the audience over the course of the Northern debate. There was the little applause at the beginning and the applause at the end. He had a growth in applause, a noticeable, audible growth in applause. Ford, clearly the least prepared, and the least prepared to talk about the future. Total lack of respect for Ontarians. Seems to have only a mercantile interest in the North, particularly for critical minerals.
Yeah, the Ring of Fire, right?
That's literally all he could talk about. And again, he cares so much about it, but what has he got accomplished on the Ring of Fire in the last 3 years? It's like Harper going to the North once a year and saying he's got all these plans, but never actually building anything. He might have lost a small sliver of support over the course of the night. There was less enthusiastic applause. And again, with Doug Ford, we don't know how much of the applause in the room is staffers and whatnot that he brought.
That's a good question.
And how much of that is organic. Marit Stiles delivered an actual summation at the end. Closing remarks. Thank you. Understand the assignment. Closing remarks are actually like packaged all together and make your final pitch. Not just like, oh yeah, that guy said that. I want to get this little last rebuttal in. It's like
one of the issues I think right now with the Liberal Party of Ontario is, they came out and said that they would double the ODSP, right?
Right.
Marit Stiles said that. Mike Schreiner said it a couple of years ago.
Yes, 2022.
So 3 years ago, Mike Schreiner said it and meant it and still means it. The Liberal Party said they would do it. But then it kind of got leaked that, well, maybe and not quite. And they're really wishy-washy on it. What's the timeline for it? So they're in hot water over that, justifiably so. She committed to a promise but has no plan to carry it out. That's disappointing. In last night's debate, I thought there was one question that should have been, the debater, the moderator tossed them a softball, right across the plate, and nobody took the swing at it. He said, "Who would build housing on the Greenbelt?" None of the leaders. Stiles says our farmland is not up for grabs. Doug Ford concedes he flip-flopped on building on the Greenbelt. This is the part that I think they missed the home run ball. None of his three opponents note the RCMP is currently investigating the $8.28 billion land swap scandal.
Right.
They had him in the crosshairs.
Yep.
And they did nothing. I'm like,
yeah. Made a big reference to his flip-flop, which was an opening that somebody should have jumped on.
It's suspicious is all I'm saying. Why didn't anybody go for his throat on that one?
Yeah.
They had the opportunity.
Yes, and Bonnie Crombie should have been the first one, because throughout the campaign, Bonnie Crombie has been saying a lot of things like, when she's still at it litigating 2 or 3 weeks into the election, which is too long now, right? Too late now, about like the fact that he called an early election that was not needed. But it was to get ahead of an RCMP investigation. He called the election to get ahead of an RCMP investigation. She's been saying it all throughout the campaign, like this, and then we get to a debate. It actually references a little bit his flip-flop, very sloppily and clumsily, actually. I'm guessing he's trying to say, hey, I admit a mistake, but I mean, he literally took little bits of phrase and then strung them together like this, and there wasn't necessarily a cogent or clear thought. Like, you had to work to figure, okay, this is what he means by putting all these facts together, what he's trying to say, but he never actually had the words. Because Doug Ford panicked a lot last night in terms of that. Just didn't have the words whatsoever. And then, as I mentioned, Marit Stiles delivered an actual summation. Was pretty solid. There came a point where she had stopped, and had she stopped right there, it would have been a perfect. But she had a little bit more time, continued, didn't actually stick the dismount on the summation. It was like, I just stop talking there. Yeah. But did really well. She will probably have the best social media clips from the first debate night and going across. And then, as I mentioned, Crombie did better than they expected, but far from knocked it out of the park. Far from knocked it out of the park. Not sure if she managed to convince people that she's not Ford and heels, she had plenty of other opportunities. There's a couple of times where she spoke more from a personal aspect, so to be relatable and all that type of stuff, which could have worked for her. She gave it a good shot. She really did. She tried. So there was a strategy. She tried to implement and whatnot. How good she was at delivering it, but you could see that she had a plan and a strategy that she tried to execute it. She didn't harm herself. Yes, but was it enough to grow? So that's what I was left from there, from the first one. So they had a couple of days. They all talked to their media consultants, their advisors, their stylists, all that type of stuff, body language experts, and came back for yesterday. Ford clearly did no debrief from the first debate.
Nothing.
No, none.
He thinks he's just going to walk away with the whole thing, and that's why.
Well, he is so far. But the point is...
No, I mean the election.
Yes, I know that. Yeah, he is. The thing here, though, is... How about it? Strutting around like you know you've got it in the bag.
Mm.
And the contempt for the people that comes from that in the answers. Well, I don't have to stay and answer the scrum. I got this. I don't have to have people show up for the debate. I got this. I don't have to give you an answer that actually respects your intelligence. I got this. It's grating on me, and I do not understand how it's not grating on everyone.
Well, and the
Sheer
thing,
arrogance.
this is how arrogant he is, though, and how foolish he is at the same time. And maybe the word I'm looking for is a little short-sighted. I don't know. But he touted hiring former federal health minister Dr. Jane Philpott to reform the healthcare system in Ontario. And Bonnie Crombie shot back at him, "You had to hire a liberal to fix it."
Boom.
Like,
yep.
Doug.
Yep. Oh, yeah. That's what I mean. She definitely improved. There was one time in a Doug Ford response, I think that was one of the two like this, but she heckled him twice in the response, and both of them were like, ow, gee, Bonnie, hold back. Whoa. So, like I said, she learned, and she learns fast.
Mm-hmm.
But is there enough runway, right? There's a reason why Doug chose to go now and choose the shortest possible election time period possible, and in the middle of winter. So last night,
calls an election in February, and why? Because they know there'll be low turnout, and they think they can win.
Right. So last night, Ford did not get off to a good start.
No.
Tripped over his tongue a lot. Couldn't get a sentence out. Rambling a lot. Styles was telegenic, confident, no problem. Crombie had a very solid opening. She actually presented a narrative to open. I'm going to tell you a story.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Schreiner drew excellent contrast between general competence and Ford in the opening one. Then this debate, I have to say, I liked it. I liked David Cobbin as the moderator.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't a typical debate. They had various different setups between the contenders, and they threw some questions in that weren't typical questions. Like sometimes there were human questions. So right off the bat, second question, they did their openings, and the first question was, what was your first job and what did it teach you? Now, a lot of people go, oh my God, it's been so fun. No.
It's a legit question.
These are very, very, very good questions, right? Because this is an opportunity for the candidates to show a little authenticity. Oh my God, I remember my first job. Wow. It was when, right? We all remember. We all have a story about our first job. Don't we?
Doug said he delivered papers at 5 a.m. when he was in the second grade. I have a really hard time believing that.
Me too. So I liked all the answers genuinely, even Ford's, even though it was a little stretch. But Crombie made the most of the opportunity
Mhm.
in this answer, because as it, again, Doug Ford is the guy that was born with a silver spoon in her mouth, but Bonnie Crombie um, seems she has a background where she had to pull herself up by her bootstraps
Mm-hmm.
to get to the position where she's in today. So, could relate and was more relatable here. Um, then, first big question: how soon will everybody have a family doctor? Doug Ford rambled a lot of numbers, but never answered the question. And second question: this is now the third opening statements and second question of the night, and he's already twice now said, "But to have this stuff, you need to have a good economy, and you can't trust these people with the economy." So, two questions in, he's run for a safety blanket twice. Not impressive. Not impressive. The other three said it would be within the next 4 years of their mandate if they were elected and offered answers with substance. Crombie, though, went for the jugular in this one and asked Ford to look right into the camera and talk to those who lost loved ones. Ford was unable to do that or unwilling. Visibly rattled when asked the question, didn't even attempt to engage with the request. Went to talking numbers. Again, like the Friday on addictions, looked completely heartless, I guess. And then in that answer, Crombie landed 2 bonus punches with some well placed heckles there. Uh, it's uh, Doug Ford. I cannot stress enough how Doug Ford's presentation was just offensive. I mean, I cannot imagine being someone living in Ontario, because we had Dr. Vivian on, right, who lost somebody. And to have Bonnie Crombie turn around and say, I want you to look into the camera and tell Ontarians who lost. And Doug Ford, with the back of his hand, and said, well, I believe in actions, not words. And, well, if you believe in actions, you were asked to pose an action, look into the camera, and the other people. And all you had was words. It was a bad moment. I was just discouraged. I don't know. What do you do in the face of that, Mr. Grizzly?
I honestly,
Someone so heartless, someone not able to be moved.
I honestly don't know. It's I don't know, man. I just don't. Some days you sit here and you go, "What the hell are we going through? What is going on? Why do we have somebody like Doug Ford in power?" Well, because the voter turnout in the last election was so low, it was incredible. 43% turnout in a province of almost 16 million people. It wasn't quite 16 million at the time. It is today, but it wasn't quite then. I don't know what's going to happen. I am afraid he's going to get reelected. I really am. And I'm afraid it's going to happen due to voter apathy, a lack of people turning up to vote. I voted by mail already. My ballot's been cast. I'm good to go. I don't have to worry about anything. And the polling station is in my building. But the whole get registered to vote, I'm like, what? No. I just show up, show them my ID, and that's it. I'm done. That's how I register.
Yeah.
I think they're playing a little game where they have people confused. What do you mean, register to vote? I voted in every election. I should be registered. They're playing with language here to get people thinking that they have to do something extra. All you have to do is show up with proper ID that verifies your address, and you get to vote.
Yeah. Something that has your name, something that has your address. That's it. And if you don't have either, someone that lives in your neighborhood in the same writing who can vouch for you. Yes, I know this person.
Well,
Who has their name and their address as ID.
Something like a hydro bill or a phone bill or a cable bill or an internet bill, something that has your name and address on it, and something that can prove who you are with a photograph and attached name, a government piece of ID, i.e. They still don't accept health cards, which is weird because health cards are issued in the same place your driver's license is issued by the same people, but they won't accept it.
Yeah, you can't use your card ID.
I know, but it's government ID. That's the weird part, right?
It has something to do because it's health or something.
It's strangely bizarre.
I didn't quite get it, but apparently there's something about health information specifically that you can't use.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
The thing is, but they're using language to make you think you have to make extra effort into getting your ballot, and you don't. Just show up. I did it in advance because I was pissed off about this whole registration thing, and I said, screw it. Send it to me in the mail.
I always recommend that people verify the registration, particularly if you have moved in the last year or since the last election, that type of thing. But in Canada, these things are usually seamless, especially if you file your taxes. Right, you just tick that little box and then you're registered. So hopefully, yes, that was a little weird thing in the campaign. I do admit, Mr. Grizzly, the second video I sent you, the one from yesterday, and while this is playing, I will look for the clip in the Northern debate that I was talking about earlier that I showed the kids. But if you go to 8:38,
the second clip.
Yes, the second clip. So last night's debate.
Okay, 8:38.
Yeah, this is the beginning of the housing section.
Oh no, this is Northern. Both clips are Northern.
What? Both clips are Northern?
Both clips are Northern that you sent me. Yes.
Oh my God.
In response to the question on the screen from Jillian, is there any chance that the upcoming story you dangled yesterday will affect voter engagement or sentiment in Ontario? No, nothing like that. Nothing like that. The story will be coming out. I don't know exactly when. It should be soon. It is quite the story, and that's all I can say.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
Yeah. Even Mr. Grizzly knows more about it than I do because I don't even know what the story is.
Well, it was something that was told to me in confidence, and I could let you know that there's a big story coming. But that's all I can say.
Okay.
There is a big story coming. I can't tell you anything more than that.
I'm a very patient beaver.
Well, I don't know. We should see it at some point in the near future. The sooner the better, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, that's still the Northern debate, sir. Look, you sent me the Northern debate starting at the 26-minute. I don't know. I don't know.
It literally says Ontario Party leaders take part in election debate February 17th, 2025. And then I do share and I copy the link and I send it to you. But for some reason, the Northern debate link keeps on appearing.
Well, look, this is what you just sent me. Ontario Party leaders take part in debate on Northern issues. And it starts at the 26-minute mark, 26 minutes and 37 seconds.
Yeah. All right, let's try this one last time.
Like I don't know what you're trying to send me, but whatever it is it just keeps getting the same.
Last night's debate instead of the Northern one. Really weird.
This is last night's debate.
Okay, good. Sometimes it does that. I do the copy, but it still saves the last thing I copied rather than the new thing. So 8:38.
8:38, huh?
8:38, yeah. And we'll play the healthcare section for you all the way through so that you can see how Bonnie Crombie sort of comes in and slides in, and then does the two heckles for you. This was probably one of the better moments of the night last night.
All right.
For my parents.
All right, Mike Schreiner, thank you. Our upcoming topics do have some ground rules, and that is to say that if one of the leaders here makes a claim about one of their opponents or another party or their government or a previous party leader in their answer, we're going to give that other person extra uninterrupted time to respond. So this means we sort of encourage you to talk about your plan. And with that, we turn to a very important topic, healthcare. You have 1 minute each. Bonnie Crombie, the first question to you. 2.5 million people in this province do not have a family doctor. We see the strain on emergency rooms. You all have different proposals for a fix. What timeline? When can people expect to have dedicated primary care?
Yeah. Within 4 years, David, is the answer. So I talk to people across the province, and they tell me they're afraid to get sick. They're really worried that the worst thing that can happen to them is to have to need a family doctor because they know they might not have one available. That's not the kind of Ontario that I believe in, the kind where 2.5 million people don't have a family doctor, 11,000 are waiting for surgery or care or treatment, or people in the north have to drive 4 or 5 hours to see their family doctor. And that's because Doug Ford doesn't believe in our public health care system. One of the things that make us so proud to be Canadian. It's time for a change. A vote for Ontario's Liberals is a vote for family doctors. And how am I going to do that? By paying them better, bringing more of them, bringing in those internationally trained doctors. They could be your children who are trained in the US or the UK. Let's bring them back home by doubling the residency spaces, by paying our nurses and our PSWs a living wage. But none of that can happen while Doug Ford is Premier. So it's time for a change.
All right, Bonnie Crombie, that is your time. Because you mentioned Doug Ford twice, I'll give him 30 seconds to respond to those claims before we move further.
Well, first of all, there's no government in the history of this country that's invested more, 30% more than the previous government. That's over $30 billion. And we ended up going out there, attracting 15,000 new doctors, 100,000 new nurses, 30,000 nursing students in colleges and universities. But I can tell you one thing, you can't do it without a strong economy. The foundation of our healthcare is a strong economy, and unfortunately, all three of them fail in our economy.
All right, Doug Ford, I'll come back to you. Mike Schreiner.
That was the safety blanket line right there. So Bonnie Crombie, right? Substantive, lots of things. She's making many points, all the things that she could touch on. Like this answers the question directly. It will be within 4 years, and then Doug Ford. This is what he shows up with.
The economy, the economy, the economy.
That's his answer. When I'm saying his presence was an insult.
Yeah.
He had been better had he just not shown up. It would have been less insulting.
You know, it makes one wonder if Doug were to have a myocardial infarction, what would be done? You know, how long does he have to wait in the hallway for? I'm just asking a question, right? Maybe he would learn firsthand what it's really like if he was treated like the rest of us.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll continue.
Garner, the question, of course, is how soon under your plan will people out there have dedicated primary care?
Within a 4-year mandate, David. It's not fair in Ontario right now that 2.5 million people don't have access to a family doctor. Rural hospitals are closing their services, and we have 30,000 young people on a wait list to access mental health services. I was in Chesley, Ontario, and I met a man who said, thankfully, this local hospital saved my life. But if I have a stroke today, in the evening or the weekend, it won't save my life because it's only open from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. That's what happens when you underinvest in healthcare. And that's exactly why the Ontario Greens have a plan to make sure everyone has a family doctor, primary health care provider, stop the privatization of healthcare, invest in rural hospitals, and ensure that the people who provide care for us, nurses and frontline healthcare workers, are paid a fair wage. And we will also expand mental health services because mental health is health.
Mike Schreiner, thanks very much. We'll turn to Marit Stiles on the question.
Just before we get to Marit, I want to address the fact that Mike Schreiner always has a coherent, cogent
Right.
discussion.
Right.
He's on point. He knows what he's talking about. He has done the work. He's been like that since he's been the leader of that party.
Yeah. The thing that I found surprising with him in those two debates is that there were a couple of questions where he didn't seem to have that as much as last time, which was really interesting. And it was like, oh, okay. And often they were on the things that you would expect him as being like the leader of the Green Party.
Right.
So that's almost like he put extra work into the other things. But like I said, last time, every single answer, every single one, he hit it out of the park. There's a couple of them, these two debates, where it was like,
Well, and he answers.
but I have such high expectations of him.
True. But he answers the question, unlike
Yes.
Doug, who will just pivot and talk about the economy.
Yes, and mind you, again, the question is there on the screen. What was the question, Mr. Grizzly?
How soon, under your plan, will everyone in Ontario have a family doctor?
You will notice that Doug Ford did not say how soon.
No.
Because under his plan, he doesn't have that plan for you.
There is no plan.
He can't tell you because he's not planning.
The Ontario Green Party is the only party that has a fully costed platform.
Yep.
The only one.
So far, yep.
So, maybe think about who you're voting for. Okay, we'll continue.
When, under your plan, will people out there who don't have a family doctor right now have one?
Right. Thanks for the question. And the quick answer to that is our healthcare guarantee, which is that everybody will have one within 4 years. Having said that, my pledge is also that within the first 100 days, we're going to remove the paperwork and the administrative burden from the desks of our family doctors. Look, family doctors that I talk to, what they want to do is see patients, and they're overwhelmed with that paperwork, that burden. So we're going to make sure we get that off their desks by providing additional support, connecting them to family health teams. And I'd say this as well to folks watching out there. 10,000 people in Sault Ste. Marie lost their doctors overnight, not that long ago. We have emergency rooms closed. An average wait time in an emergency room in Hamilton is 22 hours. Let that sink in, right? We cannot afford to continue on the road that we're on. So I'm also going to recruit and train and make life better for nurses so that we can keep them in our hospitals, treat them with respect, not take them to court or freeze their wages.
All right, Marit Stiles, I'll turn to Doug Ford on the core question. How soon, under your plan, will everyone have a dedicated primary care provider?
Well, what I said earlier, we've invested over 30% more than the previous government, and that's over $30 billion. What we've done, and I don't care about political stripes, as you know, I'll work with anyone. We brought on Dr. Jane Philpott, former Liberal health minister, and we're spending over $1.8 billion to connect every single person. We're leading the country right now at 90% of people connected to primary care, but that's not good enough. We're going to hit 100% with the help of Dr. Jane Philpott, well-renowned right across the country. But we've also built, as I said, over 50 new hospital sites or additions, $50 billion. And we're going to continue to invest into the doctors, over 15,000 people, over 3,500 new beds, and another 3,000 on top of that. But you can't do this without the foundation, and that's the economy. And each of them fail on the economy. It's very simple.
All right, that is time.
Once again, the only thing he's got is the economy, because that's the only thing he clearly cares about.
But in that, it's like, well, we got Dr. Jane Philpott, and then we put this, and then he starts these thoughts and doesn't actually finish them. So it's like, so you're supposed to figure out by him saying, well, we brought Dr. Jane Philpott in, world-renowned across the country.
I honestly don't know how anybody in their right mind could cast a vote for the Conservative Party with that as the leader. I just don't get it. I don't get it. Well, he speaks to us on our language.
He doesn't even complete a damn sentence.
He's not saying anything. Like he's a FM radio DJ from the 70s. He talks for an hour and says nothing. Let's continue. I'm going to get a cup of tea. I'll be back in a minute.
Doug Ford, thank you very much. We're going to turn now to our first debate where anyone can jump in if you want to talk about what anyone else has said. I will step in if it turns into everyone just speaking over each other. And of course, we reserve the right, don't want to, but we reserve the right to mute microphones if the audience just can't understand what's being said here. Our subject continues to be healthcare. I'll turn to Mike Schreiner. And the question is a family doctor for everyone realistic and affordable?
It absolutely is, but it won't be if Ontario continues to be dead last in per capita healthcare spending in the entire country. It would take an additional $12 billion just to get us up to the average. That's why you have rural hospitals closing their services. That's why 2.5 million people don't have a doctor. We need to make the investments that the Ford government has failed to make.
I would just say this, in answer to your question, David, we cannot afford not to get this right. We cannot afford not to have family doctors for everyone. It's essential and it's crucial. But let's be clear, the healthcare crisis that we are in right now, the hallway healthcare crisis was invented by the previous Liberal government. But Doug Ford and his government have poured gasoline all over it. We have a crisis in our province right now. He can talk about how much he's spent on healthcare, but the reality is, talk to any Ontarian about the state of our healthcare crisis right now. It's terrible. We cannot afford not to invest in healthcare right now and make sure people have family doctors, but also nurses in our hospitals right now.
Respected.
By your own admission, Doug, you put $1.8 billion into your plan for healthcare. You put more into the spa at Ontario Place at $2.1 billion. Yeah, you might build hospitals, but you're not recruiting doctors. You're not recruiting nurses, and you're not giving them the operating costs. I'd like you to look into the camera, and I'd like you to tell the people at home who lost loved ones while they were on the wait list what you did over the past 7 years to fix our healthcare system, because it's broken. We're in crisis, and you're bragging about what you've done. It's been an abysmal failure.
Doug Ford?
Well, Bonnie, what I will tell you, there's a reason why Dr. Jane Philpott, a liberal minister, comes to our team. It's very simple because she sees the vision. She sees that we're building healthcare. She sees that, again, backlog surgeries. You know something? We have less backlog surgeries per capita than anyone in the entire country. We've bought over 49 MRI machines to spread out across the entire province.
11,000 people waited. 11,000 people died waiting for one of those scans.
Said he would
you know something? We will never.
It's gotten twice as worse.
We will never.
Can you explain to people?
We got 10 seconds.
We'll use a credit card. We'll use your OHIP card. That's what we're going to do.
Private medicine. That's what you want to take us to. Private medicine, Doug.
That's what we're going to do.
With that, we've run out of time in this segment. We're going to continue with another important subject, and that is the cost of living. Once again, you have 1 minute to answer. Mike Schreiner, I'll start with you this time. Groceries, rent, and mortgage payments have all gone up for many people, and yet also for many people, salaries have not kept up. What will you do to help ease what is for many people?
All right. As you can see, Bonnie Crombie flattened him in that section. And you could see when she went into that, I want you to look to the camera if you were looking at Doug Ford's face. That's why I was doing this. Like, look at his face. He was rattled.
Oh, yeah.
It hit him. He was rattled. And I was like, well, we got Jane Philpott. Liberals, stop bashing on me. I got a liberal to help.
That's just too funny.
He's terrible.
And we've elected him twice. Look, I got the first time why he got in. Okay, people were sick of the Liberal government in Ontario. They had a vendetta against Kathleen Wynne because of her predecessor, and she dropped the ball on a few things. Her predecessor, Dalton McGuinty, he called himself a Liberal, but he really wasn't. So people had been sick of the Liberal Party of Ontario. They were tired of them. So they thought, well, let's pivot and try this. Like, why Doug Ford? Why Doug Ford? Because he's folksy? Oh, that's great. I know lots of folksy people, but none of them should be in government.
Can we get folksy and smart?
Please?
You can be smart and folksy? Dumb.
Merritt's from Newfoundland. That's about as folksy as it gets.
Right? Right. So the debate continues after this section that was not good at all for Doug Ford. And that was pretty much emblematic of the night for him, his performance.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, he didn't really have any good moments. It was just literally looking to skate by with as minimum as possible. The following question was about youth crime. Specifically, what would you do to stop youth crime? Ford skips right over the nuance of the word youth
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about crime and talks about throwing people in jail, locking them up. Youth,
Yeah,
kids,
I know.
talking
Let's
about all of them like they're like, hardcore
Yeah.
gangsters showing up at your door with guns to, take you out.
Look, Doug, just because you were a drug dealer and supplier when you were a teenager doesn't mean everybody is.
Yep. So by this point, now we're at the fourth question of the debate, and I'm sitting there, I was like, he's just going to focus his way through the entire thing, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Exactly what he did. Bonnie Crombie took a long way to that answer on youth crime, but did have a very thin answer. Unfortunately, she still had 30 seconds worth of time. And again, had she just stopped there, because when she stopped there, she gave the thin answer. That she's, oh, well, I still have 30 seconds, I'll keep. And then she was trying to find the place where she was in her answer and just like repeated stuff, whatnot, and didn't really get to anything. She should have just stopped, let go 30 seconds. Because by the time the thin answer, it's like, okay, you actually answered the question. Okay. The minimum that you could do to answer the question, but you answered the question. Move on. But that didn't happen. Schreiner also didn't really attempt an answer on something having to do with youth crime, which from, again, him surprised me. But he did point out that Doug Ford's failure to get cases to trial on time does account for a significant percentage of the people that just get off free.
Yeah.
Maybe, again, Doug, maybe if you did your job and made sure that the court systems were properly staffed. Just say all the structural stuff that matters. He's got nothing for it. He's not doing the job.
And he never will.
Yeah.
Let's continue.
Hold on. No, we're not going to do another clip from there yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to show that one because it was the key moment of the night there. Ford got to yammer on a bit to boast in this, because remember, the original subject was youth crimes.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do to stop youth crime? I'm building jails. Nobody else wants to build jails. I'm building jails. He was, without thinking of the irony that you probably should not be proud that you need to build jails.
Yeah, and he'll try and blame it on the federal government too when it's a provincial and municipal matter.
They let all these people in that you asked for.
You asked for.
And then didn't plan.
You asked for so your private strip mall colleges could bring them in.
Right.
Take their money and then send them on their way without any education whatsoever.
Right. So the youth crime thing then brought it up to a larger discussion about public safety. All three challengers had good points to make about various ways that you can improve public safety. And Doug Ford, once again, rattled off numbers on past achievements, but had nothing for the future. Then came the question you were mentioning about the Greenbelt. Very simple. And the host said, this is you only get 30 seconds for this. It's pretty much just yes or no, but 30 seconds with a little time to say yes, no, and why, I guess. Mm-hmm. Would you build housing on the Greenbelt? The Greens, no. The NDP, no. The Liberals, no. Ford, no. Which provided a lot of chuckling. Yeah, and then he got a little defensive, then tried. This was the section where, again, he said like little bits of sentences like this, and you were supposed to fill in the blanks to try to figure out what it is that he actually meant. But from what I can figure here is that, I was going to do it, then I didn't do it. So I'm guessing he's trying to suggest that him changing his mind and ultimately not doing it is a virtue.
Mm-hmm.
But he promised to them that he would, then us that he wouldn't, and then he did. And then he got caught and decided he didn't. And then he just took the green belt scheme and then applied it to various other contracts and started doing that with those. So, yeah, it provoked a lot of chuckling. And then he got defensive. It was all very sloppy. And then in the middle of that, he just like pivoted to try to attack Crombie, and it didn't work. Glump, 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 glump. It was just bad. Then each candidate was asked a specific question about a policy that they themselves have campaigned on. You've campaigned on this in this particular election, right?
Mhm.
Should be able to answer it. Ford was asked about his promise to build a tunnel without having first done a feasibility study.
Just a pipe dream, a hash pipe dream.
Yep. And he goes back to his safety blanket for the third time about,
The
you can't
economy.
put the economy. He's asked point blank by Crombie why anyone should believe anything he says. He literally said, turns around. So Bonnie Crombie, this section here is they ask the candidate a question about something they ran on, and they give another candidate a chance to ask them a question.
Mhm.
Now, you think that the question would be asked about the subject, right? But it doesn't have to be. So Bonnie Crombie turned around and says, like, after 7 years of your lies, why should anybody believe anything you say? Boom. That was the question. Ford did not even attempt an answer. It was a big fuck you to Ontarians. It was a big ol' F you.
Mhm.
Schreiner was asked what he would do with Ontario Place instead. Right? Surprisingly, doesn't answer directly, but from his answer, you can kind of infer that he would keep it as public space for the public. Like, specifically what he would do with it.
Mhm.
Doug Ford gets to ask Schreiner a question and foolishly passes on the opportunity because he is too defensive still. Actually suggests that the fact that there were dandelions growing near Ontario Place was a sign that the place was in tatters and had to be destroyed. And Schreiner didn't jump on it.
He really should have.
And dandelions? Dandelions!
They tell you not to. What is it municipalities say now? If you have dandelions, leave them be. Leave them be. Just let them do what they do. They're part of nature. I know it's a weed. I know it's invasive. I know you don't like it, but it's good for pollination. It's good for the bees. Remember, without the bees, we don't survive very long.
Yep. Now, Schreiner, while not jumping on the dandelion thing, does lean into Ford about the stupidity of blowing $2.2 billion on a spa, and that rattles Ford again and lashes out a little bit in his response. And for the fourth time, claiming nobody but him is good on the economy.
Talk about a one issue politician.
Yeah, but the problem is his economic record sucks and he makes bad deals.
Yeah, it's a single issue politician and he's bad at it. He's
I
bad
know.
at one thing he's supposed to be good at that he likes to tell you about, but he's bad at it.
Oh my God, it's so terrible. Then Barrett Stiles was asked what she would do to end homelessness. She directly answers the question, talks about getting the province back in the business of building affordable housing and building 60,000 units specifically with wraparound services to deal specifically with people who need extra services who are living in encampments. So full answer there. Schreiner has a chance to ask her a question, states that he fully supports her plan, but asks, is another bureaucracy for this really needed?
Mm-hmm.
Because where Stiles replies that every province except Ontario has an organization that manages this very thing. So Doug Ford won't do what everybody else is doing on this. Crombie was asked what she would do to help Ontarians earning less than $50,000 per year. And not 50,000 to something, to a certain amount. She has a suite of measures that she can mention off the top of her head. She directly answers Barrett Stiles asked her about having allegedly accepted a donation of $25,000 from a private healthcare provider. And there I heard all the NDP Liberal swing voters go, "Ugh."
Yeah.
Come on. Crombie tries to go on the attack by talking about something else, but it does not work. Stiles asks again and insists on an answer. I imagine swing voters are seething at this particular point. Crombie replies saying that they follow all the rules to a T, which is the answer that she should have given the first time, and perhaps pivot by taking offense at the suggestion that she may have done something wrong, and maybe even go on the counterattack and ask Merritt why it is that she's trying to split the vote.
Mm-hmm.
But she did not do that. So the candidates were then going to be asked, because as they were asked about things that were in their platform, now they're going to be asked about something that was conspicuously absent from their campaign so far to date. I really liked this debate format. So Barrett Stiles was asked about her plan to address the addiction crisis, because apparently she hasn't been talking about that too much. And she basically said, well, you don't take services away without replacing them with more and better ones. Which is true, but I mean, it's not really a full answer. She says she likes the hub idea that Doug Ford brings about, but it's not expensive. Doug Ford was asked about his failure to eliminate hallway medicine and why we should believe that he'll get it done. Once again, he starts rambling about past investments, which have accomplished nothing because hallway medicine still exists and it's worse than it was when he took office, and doesn't address the issue of his lack of credibility at all. By the way, so you've been saying for 7 years you're going to do this, and it's worse now than it was. So, what are you going to do to actually fix it this time, and why should people believe you? Well, I've invested this, and I've invested that, and I've invested. Yeah, but it hasn't worked. And the second part of the question about your credibility, we're just not going to talk about that? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Schreiner was asked about his perennial promise to eliminate Catholic school boards and why it's not part of the platform this time. Mike Schreiner just basically says that with Doug Ford's elimination of $1,500 per student in core funding, that has made other things a bigger priority than eliminating a Catholic school board. Thank you very much. Bonnie Crombie was asked about her plan to tackle traffic congestion, and she directly answers the question again with a suite of alternatives and doesn't talk only about the GTA when she talks about reducing traffic congestion, which to me scored her a few bonus points. Now, she talked about roads in the north again, which was from the Friday debate, so she already had it, but she was the only one that had presence of mind to take work that she had prepared for the northern debate and insert it here to show that she can talk about more than just the GTA. So, bonus points there. Then they were asked another human question to break the tension a little bit. And it was, when you have a weekend off, where do you go? Now, everybody's going to answer this. But the thing is that you need to listen to the question here, because while this is a personality question, it's also another question. It's a question to test whether or not you can speak very well of some of the regions of Ontario, preferably a region that you don't live in or represent.
Doug only knows Toronto and nothing else. He doesn't even know Ottawa's in Ontario, for Christ's sake.
Yes. So Doug Ford was the first to answer, but I'll save his answer for last. Mike Schreiner said he likes hiking around Guelph with his family. Bonnie Crombie, rock climbing in Thunder Bay with her family, and she also likes pickleball. Mara Stiles is a swimmer, swimming in Ontario lakes, and say that Lake Superior is on her wish list. So, Schreiner, Guelph, that's the region that he's from, so he's talking about his region.
Mm-hmm.
And this, hey, there's great hiking here. Bonnie Crombie from Mississauga, hey, there's great rock climbing in Thunder Bay. Mary Stiles, hey, Ontario lakes are great for swimming. Doug Ford, where do you go? The cottage.
But he's only been there twice.
Yes. Yes. Cottage. But my God, I've only had the chance to be there twice. Yeah. In the last year. For 19 weeks the first time. And for 11 the second. But only twice. Right? You just spent 30 of 36 weeks away from the legislature. And you're sitting here at a debate complaining that you only got to go to your cottage twice. I'm sorry, I have no sympathy for you. Every other person was able to understand that this was a tourism question.
Mm-hmm.
Except Doug Ford.
Because
nobody's buying tickets to go visit his cottage.
He's not very smart. But the economy.
What a fucking narcissist. Then they were asked about the underfunding of post-secondary education. Barrett Stiles surprisingly spoke around the subject, but didn't really have much to offer, which surprised me. Doug Ford tries to pretend that the federal cap on student visas was the big problem. If they only had removed the cap on but you asked them to remove the cap on visas to fix the housing problem you created when you asked them all to stay because you had a staffing problem that you didn't address. Oh yeah, and because you also needed them to core fund the universities because you also didn't do that. It's like political Tetris.
Mm-hmm.
We need them here to do that because we didn't do that. We chose not to do this, which is also part of our core functions, so we need them to do that. Oh, but you mean if we bring them, we have to house them, make sure they have services? Well, we didn't prepare for that either. Well, now things are overrun and people are complaining. Well, it's the Fed's fault. The problem with our post-secondary education in Ontario is not that things are suddenly underfunded this year because the cap came this year. The core underfunding happened a long, long time ago. That's why we got to this mode of being dependent on foreign students, almost principally from India. In that part, they were lazy. They didn't diversify the pool from all around the world.
Right.
Well, there's over 1 million people in India. Let's just take everybody from India. We only have to work on promoting it in one country. Gee, aren't we smart? Colleges and universities and trade schools and all that kind of stuff has been underfunded for a very, very, very long time. It's not the cap on student visas that causes the problem.
No.
Then Ford stupidly brags about cutting tuition. I was the first person to cut tuition. Yes, you were, Doug Ford, when you came into power. Except you didn't compensate universities for the loss of the revenue from lowered tuition. And given that you haven't raised tuition in 7 years, but if you look at how much the cost of everything has gone up over the last 7 years, surely you've heard something about it because affordability is a big thing and people have been talking about the price of eggs.
He doesn't know what the price is.
If you reduce tuition fees and then don't raise them for 7 years, in the highest period of inflation since the 80s, what do you think is going to happen? He didn't compensate post-secondary educations for the lost revenue when he cut tuition and froze it. And then the caps came and he said, here's $1.8 billion for you. But the caps took away more than that. Every single time he gives with the left, he gives less than he took away with the right. So the chronic underfunding issue just gets worse. Worse. In a knowledge economy, he's not funding knowledge, but he says he's best for the economy.
Mm-hmm.
None of it makes sense. None of it makes sense. Bonnie Crombie offered a very solid answer while appropriately referring to the Ford funding model as a Ponzi scheme, pointing out that Ontario finances institutions at 30% when other provinces hit 60%. Um, Mike Schreiner built on Bonnie Crombie's point, saying that it would take $5 billion of investment just to bring Ontario to the national average. So we need an extra $5 billion in investment for post-secondary education to bring it to the national average, and an extra $12 billion a year in healthcare just to bring it to the national average. And I don't know how much $1,500 per student in elementary and secondary school is for all the students to bring it back. But that's let's say it's at least as much as post-secondary. So that's about $30 billion every single year for many years that Doug Ford has not put in to three of the very core things that a province is supposed to do: health, education, basic education, and post-secondary education. And he's not going to put a cent towards it because he wants to build a tunnel. All the money
Yeah.
that's going into post-secondary education and health and regular education to shore up those gaps, those 12 billion and 5 billion what gaps, is he's going to put into a tunnel.
When we have a perfectly functional Highway 407 that all he has to do is just tear up the contract with the company from Spain that owed, what was it, $2 billion? And he just said, yeah, don't worry about it.
Oh, but that's going to be loaded up in 10 years and we still need to get around. You're not thinking of the future.
Yeah, actually, I am.
I just, this guy.
We have something there right now we can put to use right now.
Yep.
Right now.
Yep. Yep.
Instead, he wants to spend $100 billion or more on a tunnel.
Yep. So, in this debate, if you remember the section that we showed you, David Common said the rules are if anybody addresses you or mentions you, you get bonus time. So Doug Ford was referenced. So he got bonus time. So he gets another crack at it. Because he failed so terribly the first time at how he would address post-secondary education. So he gets another crack at it and then blames again the feds for the cap that the premier's asked for. And then once again reverts to listing past it. He's got nothing. He's got nothing. And then he outright lies that, quote, he will, quote, continue to invest in students like they've never seen before.
Where have I heard that before? Who says that line all the time?
So, yes, investing in students like we've never seen before by not investing in students.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Larry Stiles asks Doug Ford why he cut funding by $1,500 per student after COVID when the support was most needed. He's rattled, says her claim is inaccurate, but can't say how or why. Just lies through his veneers. And then she punches them in by stating that parents know he's lying because they know the class sizes. Just saying. Mike Schreiner pointed out that his party's costed platform shows how they'll make up the $1,500 per student difference, and asks Bonnie Crombie whether or not her platform, costed, will be available soon.
Mm-hmm.
Lies in the affirmative and pivots to talking about youth unemployment, which does matter for this subject, but it doesn't say when. Over the next remaining 10 days only, the platform will come out. Schreiner presses Crombie on the costed platform when it will be out, as she says it will, but again doesn't commit to a date, and challenges the other two to answer whether or not they will have one at all. Clever-ish pivot. Then we get to the question about landlords and renters. Bonnie Crombie says that she vows to fix the 53,000 case backlog at the landlord-tenant board, but then pivots to other elements related to housing, but don't necessarily have to do with renters. Doug Ford doesn't even attempt to answer. Him having decapped rent control was probably had something to do with the fact that there's 53,000 complaints of landlord-tenant board, but launches right into attacking Crombie. Panics, and once again runs for a safety blanket. The others will be bad for the economy. Boo! Scary. To which Bonnie Crombie bops Doug Ford on the nose with a rolled up newspaper and talks about how he used to praise her municipal rep. And then she inserts a little shameless self-promotion for an Ontario Liberal ad that they just put out. Very clever. And pivots to talking about phasing in rent controls. That section was actually very well done by Bonnie Bromley, I have to say. Mike Schreiner refers to his Green colleagues, MPP Clancy in Kitchener Centre, because she tabled a comprehensive bill to address rent control, and 2 of his previous bills to increase housing construction, and notes that Doug Ford voted against both of those bills. And he commits to building 2 million homes and diversifying the type of homes, so allowing 6plexes and 4plexes and that type of stuff, this type of stuff that Doug Ford says that we can't have for some reason. Doug Ford gets another shot to talk about housing, and housing is his issue because they mentioned him. And, well, he's in a total other galaxy talking about he's the bigger tax cutter. The issue is housing. You're the one that's been talking about the last 6 years. We need to build the homes. This is your issue. Nobody cuts more taxes than me on a housing point. Merritt Style talks about around the issue, raises the story of a constituent that she allegedly met, but no direct answer, surprisingly, other than saying that they'll work on rent control and truly affordable housing. The lack of depth on this subject was particularly surprising from an NDP candidate, I have to say. Doug Ford gets yet another chance because he was referred to again. 2 chances. 3 with the initial one. To say anything about housing for the future. No substantive answer. He points to all the cranes. I would like more. Number one, all the cranes are not building housing. Some of them might be building commercial and industrial, Doug. And if you want more, you're the premier. Why aren't there more? He wasn't good. He really was not good. And then he is asked about how he'll increase building, and he pivots to, well, first people have to be able to afford the homes. No, first the homes have to be there for people to buy. Doug, just, and then it devolves into this cacophonous mess that David Common did, like he said he would do, just cut the subject. Sorry, nope, you're all talking over each other. Nobody can understand. We're moving on to another subject. Boom. Very pressed for time. Short answers are requested, and this must have really irked Mike Schreiner because it's the environment question. Finally. But we're pressed for time, so please answer in 30 seconds. Could you imagine being the Green candidate showing up for a debate and said, okay, finally about the environment? What? I only have half the time? Ah! But basically asked, how will you reduce emissions? From a list of things he says we need to do, Mike Schreiner says, we can infer some actions, but the answer, again, surprisingly, is not direct. From the Green Party. Merritt Stiles talks about protecting farmland. Doug Ford lies that the carbon tax killed more jobs than anything, quote, and calls Crombie the queen of the carbon tax. The question was, how will you reduce emissions? I'm going to call Bonnie Crombie the queen of the carbon tax. That's how I'll reduce emissions.
That seems to make sense. Yeah.
The problem is that you made emissions with the hot air. It's saying that.
Don't tell him something that makes sense.
Then Bonnie Crombie launches right into an attack about Doug Ford being out of touch because he inherited the company from his father. Like you said, Mr. Grizzly, insists that she was the first to say that she was not supporting the carbon tax, which, while true, says nothing about how she'll deal with reducing emissions. The whole section from everybody was disappointing. One last personality question before the night is over. If you had the leaders over for dinner, what would you make? Again, I'm going to save Doug Ford's answer for last because it is very telling. Barrett Styles, a Newfoundland boil. Yum, 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 yum. Very tasty. Mike Schreiner, homemade pizza with all Ontario ingredients. Probably organic.
Mm-hmm.
Yum, 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 yum. Body crumbling. Body crumbling. Well, I'm of Polish heritage, so Polish delicacies like pierogi, borscht, and cabbage rolls. Yum, 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 yum. Doug Ford, mac and cheese. You would have the leather leaders over. What would you make? What would you serve them? Mac and cheese.
Katie.
I hope it's at least a baked casserole mac and cheese. But really? Mac and cheese.
So he'd spend $2 on them?
I'm cheap. I'm cheap, everyone.
Well, and here's the thing. I remember
Will
reading
not make
something.
an effort. Roll out the red carpet. Make an effort to entertain my guests. Other party leaders at my level.
How many boxes of mac and cheese? Because one box will feed me. Somebody said, there's 4 servings in a box of mac and cheese. I'm like, 4 servings in a craft dinner box? No, that's 1 serving. That's it. One box is 1 serving. And I have somebody say, I can't believe I ate the whole box. I'm going, that's normal.
I've always eaten the whole box.
I mean, it's, and I throw tuna, I throw a can of tuna in, a can of tuna and a cup of peas in so I can increase the protein and increase the size of the meal.
Yes.
That way I get 2 bowls full instead of just 1.
Yeah, maybe that's 4 portions according to the Canada Food Guide, but according to normal people eating, that's 1 bowl.
And remember, folks, I'm not what you would call obese in any stretch of the imagination. So 1 box of craft dinner is a meal, a single meal.
Yep.
A serving as a side. Okay.
Yeah.
That would make sense. Yeah, as a side, sure. Okay. Yeah. But I'm like, he said he was just going to have mac and cheese, which means he's going to get a box of craft dinner, and here's 250 mil for you and 250 mil for you.
Is it at least the mac crafted dinner with like the thick cheese or the gourmet cheese?
A little Gruyere.
Yes. So they get to the closings. Again, when they get to a closing, inspire me, rally me, make me want to come out and vote for you. Doug Ford lies that he'll fight Donald Trump like you've never seen before. You can't do that if you're mirroring his lingo. Doug. And we know it's a lie because he was just in the U.S. pitching AMCAN, which is deeper integration, with a guy whose word means nothing with a nation that's hostile to us. He won't fight. He's going to roll over and deliver us. And he makes bad deals.
Yes.
If I get a strong mandate from the people of Ontario, I will work harder than I have ever worked. Says with faux sincerity, a man who has just spent 30 of 36 weeks away from the legislature. Will it be hard for you to work harder than you've ever worked? You'd only have to show up 5 days a month and you achieve the job, dude. That's not saying. That's not the flex you think it is.
And then he shuts down for what, 4 months?
Shit. Body crumbing. We need a premier that will protect everyone's jobs, not just their own. Ooh.
Yeah.
Somebody brought some fire. She actually delivers a healthcare-focused summation. She understood the assignment. Barrett Styles also understood the assignment. A well-delivered final pitch, and given her natural telegenics, it really worked. And Schreiner commits to, quote, fighting for fairness, and highlights how the Ontario Greens structure makes it such that your MPP truly represents your voice to the leader and not the leader's voice to you. Again, in the closing summation, only Doug Ford did not understand the assignment. Mr. Grizzly, please take it here for a couple of seconds because I have to run to the Little Beavers room.
Will you go ahead and do that? I will be happy to chat with you ad nauseum, if you will. I do want to show a clip here from the debate because we haven't shown one in a little bit, but I think this is interesting. So I'm going to just show this quickly, and then we'll come back on the other side.
Car theft, crime on the streets, the drugs, and the guns. Never used to be like that.
The waiting time at the emergency, it's like hours and hours. I'm talking from my own experience.
I think they need to talk about healthcare, and I think they need to talk about education so badly.
A lot of people are suffering it. Right now there is a situation with the food bank. That shouldn't be happening. This is Canada.
Well, for this next segment, Siobhan Morris joins us. She is the Queen's Park Bureau Chief for CTV News. Siobhan, hello.
Hello, thank you, David. Hello, candidates. I want to ask you some questions about things that are not in your platform. You'll have 1 minute to give us your position. There is no open debate in this section. We will begin with Marit Stiles. You have vocally criticized the government's closure of supervised drug consumption sites, but you've given no details about how you will respond to the addictions crisis. What is your plan?
Well, first of all, look, as I've traveled around the province, without question, addiction and mental health care crisis is rife. It is in every community, in every corner of this province, and it has certainly gotten much worse in the last 7 years. You go to Sudbury, for example, you see that corner with all the white crosses that was built by a woman who lost her son Miles to an overdose. The answer to addiction is healthcare. Right? That means that you do not take resources out of communities without actually putting back more and better resources. And that's not what we've seen under Doug Ford and the Conservative government. We saw them take away supports and not replace them. And I like the healthcare hub idea. That came from communities. But it is a drop in the bucket what Doug Ford and the Conservatives are proposing. It will not address the addiction crisis. When somebody needs help, they need it right away, not 2 months later, not a year later. They need it immediately.
All right, Marit Stiles, thank you.
The next question is for Doug Ford. You promised in 2018 to end hallway health care, but overcrowding in hospitals now is worse than it was then. Why should voters believe that you will fix the problem now?
Because we've invested more than any other government. We've invested over $33 billion, over 30% increase. We're actually building medical schools for the first time in some areas over 100 years. As the Liberals got rid of medical school seats, we're adding hundreds and hundreds. We've registered over 15,000 doctors, 100,000 nurses. And the way we do this, the foundation of healthcare, is very simple. You have a strong economy. That's why we've been able to invest in building more medical schools, having more doctors. We're paying for their tuition, by the way. All doctors, if you stay in primary care, you get your tuition paid for. We're paying for all the nurses right across the province for their education that none of these parties have ever done. Nurse practitioners, we're taking care of them on their education.
I don't know how he can say that with a straight face, because I know that my wife, Bridget, her daughter, is at Queen's right now studying nursing.
Right.
And it ain't free.
Oh,
so how's he paying? She's nursing. She's studying nursing.
Yeah, I think there's might be a program to cover some tuition or whatnot, or if they locate somewhere or something, or yeah, I'm not quite sure, but yeah.
Okay, we'll continue.
These types of programs, but
Education as well. We're doing everything we can to build the system, along with bringing Dr. Jane Philpott in, that will connect every single person to a primary caregiver.
All right. Doug Ford, thank you very much.
A question now for Mike Schreiner. For 10 years, you've been vowing to get rid of Catholic school boards, merge them with public boards. Your new platform doesn't mention that. Why not?
Yeah, because right now we have a crisis in our public education system. The Ford government has cut per pupil funding for education by $1,500. The priority for people right now is to shore up our public education system. And that means supporting both our public and Catholic boards to hire more teachers, educational assistants, special educators, and just caring adults, social workers, so our students have the supports they need. I think coming out of the disruptions from the pandemic, we need to shore up our public education system. And unfortunately, the current government has failed to do that. Ontario Greens are committed to reversing the $1,500 per student cut. We will invest in clearing the repair backlog, and we will ensure that we can lower class sizes because we would hire caring adults in our schools.
All right, Mike Schreiner, thank you. Siobhan.
And we turn now to Bonnie Crombie. You have opposed building new highways in the GTA, but you haven't talked really about how you would address the issue of traffic congestion. What is your plan to tackle gridlock?
So certainly there are a lot of alternatives, and I will say this government has not acted on any of them. We need to invest more in our public transit systems. Look at the GO train lines. London, town of London, has been promised a GO train line. It wasn't delivered. All-day two-way GO train service on the Milton line. It was promised again. It was never delivered. We're talking about $150 billion fantasy tunnels. Rather than utilizing existing resources like leveraging the 427 or truck-only lanes on the 407, there's a lot more public infrastructure that can be built, public transit that we need to invest in. Right across the province, look at the highways in the north, twinning the 2+1 lanes in 11 and 17, adding the extra 68 kilometers on Highway 69 in the north, because those roads are so treacherous and we rely on them. But here in the GTA, invest more in public transit to move people around. Here is where the needs are. People need to get to their jobs, and they need to get to their appointments and to their school.
Bonnie Crombie, thank you very much.
So that was like one of the more interesting sections, right? Asking people what it is that you've been avoided to be talking about. And as you can see, right, as I mentioned, Bonnie Crombie able to talk about more than just the GTA in her answer.
Yes.
And Doug Ford just starts of phrases that he doesn't actually complete, thoughts that you're supposed to fill in the blank for, and just, we got Jade Philbot, we did that, and we did this, and we invented, and bring out the accountant advisor with the 35 beds, $1.8 million. But what about the results? It's good to spend money, but you got no results. So, the other one I wanted to show, Mr. Grizzly, if you still have the Northern debate clip handy.
Do I have that here? Hang on. Yeah, just give me a minute and I'll pull it up.
All right. This was the clip I was looking for at the beginning of the show, and that will be the last one from the debates for us today. And it will be around 27:20.
27:20. Yeah.
This is the housing section where Marit Stiles destroys Doug Ford.
Okay, let's bring this up and have a look.
Likes taxing people.
Let's move on to the next question. We've got a timeline we've got to follow here. And next topic is housing, which you've already talked a bit about, Mr. Schreiner. Issue across the country. The increasing cost of living, the lack of affordable housing means more people are priced out of home ownership, and many can't afford rent. The provincial government used to be responsible for social housing, but that was downloaded to municipalities in the 1990s. Would your party consider taking the issue of social housing off the backs of municipalities and make it a provincial responsibility? This time we're going to start with Doug Ford.
Well, we've done more for housing than any government. We've cut the red tape, we've cut regulations, and as the mayor of Mississauga, she's increased taxes. The only municipality in the province, as I said, that actually shrunk because of her high taxes, irresponsible taxes on the backs of people. We're cutting red tape to make sure we can get shovels in the ground. And for the folks, homeless folks, we put over $1.4 billion to get them shelter, to give them a lift up, rather than be stuck on the streets. Folks, we're going to continue cutting red tape, by the way, that all three of these parties always voted against in the legislature. They don't believe it. They say we want to build. They don't believe in building. Bonnie Crombie had the lowest builds in all of Ontario. And Mr. Schreiner, he won't cut down a dandelion to put the shovels in the ground. He just won't do it. And Mara, you don't believe in building. You vote against us on every single bill. You know, I see my friend Vic Fideli in there. He's beside me in the house. And he just keeps going in my ear saying, I can't believe these people. All they want to do is tax and build nothing and then criticize. We're a party of action. We're going to continue building, setting record numbers. We're ones who led right across the country getting rid of the HST on rental built housing. So we're going to continue lowering the cost. And I'd love to see the municipalities chop out the delivery charges and making sure they put money back into people's pockets. And the DCs alone in Mississauga are $120,000 by the time you add up all the taxes. They don't want to build. They want to tax people to death. That's what they believe in. I don't believe in taxes.
Thank you, Doug Ford. Next up is...
Stop that for a second.
I don't believe in taxes.
We need to build, but I don't believe in taxes. Well, with what are you going to build, Doug? The answer was Jell-O.
Yeah.
He spoke for 2 minutes, and it was Jell-O. There's nothing there for you.
Never
attack them, and then you notice all of it was in Doug's whiny voice.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta get the problems. They don't want to raise taxes. He's got nothing. Let's keep it going. This is his subject, housing.
Yeah.
Mike Schreiner of the Green Party. And again, the question from Frenum is, would your party consider taking the issue of social housing off the backs of municipalities and make it a provincial responsibility?
To answer your question, Marcus, yes, absolutely. We have that costed out in our Affordable Communities Plan. Municipalities spent almost $2.1 billion last year addressing housing and homelessness. The provincial government hardly added anything to that. Let's look at the record over the last 7 years. Housing starts are at an all-time low in Ontario. Housing prices are at an all-time high in Ontario. Why is that? Most of the government's housing plans have been, how do we unlock profits for wealthy land speculators instead of how do we unlock affordable homes that people can afford? The result of their housing record is we have a whole generation of young people wondering if they'll ever be able to afford a home. We live in a province where nowhere in this province can a minimum wage worker working full-time afford average monthly rent. And now we have over 81,000 people experiencing homelessness right now in Ontario. Can you imagine that? So what would the Ontario Greens do? We're going to fight for generational fairness. Our plan to build for first-time home buyers would remove development charges and other fees to save up to $150,000 on a new starter home. We would remove the red tape that would enable you to build fourplexes and 4 stories in neighborhoods across the province. So we can build homes people can afford, where we already have infrastructure, in the communities they love, close to their families, close to where they work. We would bring back protections for renters, and we would get government back into building deeply affordable homes again. We need to build 310 deeply affordable nonprofit co-op and permanent supportive homes with wraparound mental health and addiction supports. 93% of the deeply affordable homes built in Ontario were built before 1995, and the last 2 governments have failed to change that. Ontario Greens will.
Thank you, Mike Schreiner. Up next is Bonnie Crombie about whether the province should be responsible for social housing.
So, Premier, you talk a good tale and you sound kind of folksy and charming, but none of what you're saying is actually true. Because you told us 7 years ago you'd end hallway health care. It's gotten twice as bad. You said you'd cut our taxes. But you didn't do that either. You didn't get it done. And you said you'd build 1.5 million homes. You didn't get that done either. Our construction workers are going to Alberta and BC where they're eating our lunch. And so is Quebec for that matter. We built more homes in 1955 than we're building here today. In fact, we're not meeting 50% of our targets. That's terrible. Children are losing the dream of owning their home. I have 3 kids. 2 of them got married this summer, and both of them want to start a family. And they said, Mom, what are we going to do? We can't put money away because we can barely afford our rent. How are we going to afford that home? So I said to my team, we've got to lower the cost of building. We've got to reduce the price of a home, but yet we've got to make municipalities whole, because I know a lot about making municipalities whole as well. You got to keep their taxes low, because this government, they just downloaded everything to the municipalities. And so of course municipalities, so many of them have double-digit tax increases. My plan is to cut those hidden taxes at the end. They're called development charges, and we would get rid of them entirely. That'll lower the cost of building, it'll lower the price to the purchaser, and I have a fund called the Better Communities Fund that will make the municipalities whole as well. We're going to scrap the land transfer tax too, for seniors, for first-time home buyers, and also for not-for-profits. Our plan will save you $170,000 on a home and another $13,000 once we scrap the LTT. I want to make home building cheaper. I want your kids and mine to have a home again, because under Doug Ford's Ontario, there is no home building happening, and our children can't afford their rent, let alone put money aside to one day, again, hope that they can buy their own home.
Thank you, Bonnie Crombie. And finally, Marit Stiles of the NDP, about social housing being a provincial responsibility.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Marcus. And let's take a moment here to remember how we got into this place that we're in, right? Because back, as you said, in the 90s, it was Liberal governments at the federal level and provincial governments at the provincial Conservative governments that canceled the affordable building of homes, the building of truly, deeply, permanently affordable homes that we used to do in this province. Now, Ontario is the only province in Canada that doesn't already build those homes. We are absolutely going to start building again. And I am so proud of our Homes Ontario plan, because we are committed to building 1.5 million truly, deeply, permanently affordable homes in the province of Ontario over 10 years. And that, by the way, includes 60,000 supportive housing units, which is what we're going to need to make sure that we can move people out of those encampments and out of homelessness. But look, the other question I want to ask people is, where are the houses? Where are the homes that Doug Ford said he was going to build? Where are the homes, Doug? Because they're not in our communities. They're not in northern communities. They're not anywhere in Ontario right now. He has not done a dang thing about it. That is the truth. And now there's a whole generation of young people who cannot even imagine buying a home and can't even find an affordable rental home. We're going to build those homes, and not only are we going to do that, but we are going to build those homes with lumber from right here in Northern Ontario. We are going to tariff-proof our economy long-term by buying Ontario and building Ontario. 7 years of this government, housing costs are through the roof. It is time that you had a government that was on your side.
We will open this up for a discussion for the next 2 or 3 minutes. Doug Ford, we're going to start with you and about how your party plans to address and provide for more affordable housing.
Well, I'll tell you how. It's very simple. We're going to protect the people of Ontario. And how you build more homes, you protect businesses, you protect their jobs against Donald Trump's tariffs. You know, we heard from Bonnie
They're laughing at him
about the DCs. You know, it wasn't too long ago, I went out there and said, let's cut the DCs by 50%. Not all, just by 50%. You had to pull Bonnie Crombie off the ceiling. She was out in front of the media saying, we can't afford to get rid of the DCs, the land transfer tax. You know, something's very simple. You protect the economy, you protect the people's jobs. Yeah. They're going to have an opportunity to go out there.
Marit Stiles, I'd like Marit Stiles to go first.
Have a chance, because every business
Mr. Ford
will close down and leave this province.
Mr. Ford, we'll let Marit Stiles speak to this.
You have not answered the question, because the truth is, there are no homes being built in Ontario. Right? Housing starts are lower than they've been since the 50s. That's the truth, under his government. And so actually, at the end of the day, Doug, people are not, they don't have any options out there. You talk about Donald Trump, you have shown us who you are. You say one thing in front of the public like this, and you go to say another thing behind closed doors every single time. You did that on the Greenbelt. You lied to Ontarians, and you're lying to them now about homes and housing. But you know what? They don't believe you, because they're living the reality of it right now. They're living it. They know that they can't find an affordable home. They know that young people know that they can never even imagine owning a home in the province of Ontario. Ontario has become a have-not province in Canada. We are falling so very far behind. Doug,
let Bonnie Crombie. Bonnie Crombie would like to speak.
Absolutely right. You fly off in the middle of an election for photo ops in Washington with low-level advisors. What's the point? Why'd you call the election? We have a housing crisis here. We're at a tipping point. Do you know there are 200,000 people who don't have a home, who are homeless, who are living in your parks or living in encampments. We need a strategy for the North that allows you, gives you the capital that you need dedicated towards building housing for people who are homeless, to get them out of encampments. But let's ensure that you have those wraparound services that you need, so they have the treatment, so they have access to the treatment that they need to get them off their addictions. But the North in particular needs a specific fund of capital, a specific strategy to help you build housing not only that is affordable, but supportive housing for those that need it.
I want to let Mike Schreiner have a quick word before we move on to the next question. Go ahead, Mr. Schreiner.
This Premier, Mr. Ford, has said no to every housing solution that works for people. Why? Because the interests of wealthy land speculators are more important to this government than you, the people of Ontario, struggling just to put a roof over your head. And to play politics with tariffs at a time when we should all be working across party lines, showing strength through unity to push back against Donald Trump, to distract from the failure to actually build homes and the $8.3 billion Greenbelt scandal, I believe is highly irresponsible. I'm ready to work with all of us up here.
Thanks, Mike.
Every single one of us up here to stand united against Trump's tariffs.
That's right.
And at the same time, build homes, fix healthcare, fix education, and ensure we have a strong economy.
Houses should be about, should be about
we need
families.
a wartime effort. Everyone working together to solve the housing crisis.
Families, not speculators. Not
Doug Ford, we'll give you 20 seconds to wrap up. Doug Ford.
We put the Building Faster Fund that Mississauga didn't meet, but everyone else met around the area.
You always have an
we
excuse,
put $3 billion towards infrastructure to build 160,000 more homes.
Where are they, Doug? Where are they?
Against it. All three
Where
parties voted against it.
It's because
We're making sure we cut red tape and regulations.
1.5 million homes. You didn't get it done.
Against it. And honestly, with all due respect, Bonnie, you should be the last one speaking about building homes. You had the lowest builds in all of Ontario.
I am so proud of my city and my record.
We're going to
Doug Ford, I'll
stop.
take my record over yours any day.
Mississauga is not proud
Your
of you.
record
I'll
is a
tell you
disaster.
that
You know what? Look at this.
Stop,
Look at
please.
this.
Thank you.
It's outrageous, these two fighting over, who's built the least housing in Ontario at a time when we have a housing and homelessness crisis in the province.
We need a wartime effort.
All right. Doug Ford, drowning on his subject, Merritt Stiles. You did it on the Greenbelt. You did this. You're just laying into them. And he gets an opportunity to respond and doesn't address these things. We've invested more than anybody. And yes, Ronnie Comby had a problem with the fact that development charges, as the mayor of Mississauga, that the city would not be receiving development charges because Doug Ford decided to do his thing, but not compensate the cities for the money they would be losing for the development charges. So yeah, as mayor, a mayor would not be happy because you know what? When you download everything on the cities and then you pass a law that says that the cities are not allowed to run deficits, yeah, you can claim that, hey, I will never raise your taxes because I'll just download everything on the cities and force the cities to raise your taxes by double digits. Vote for me. Doug Ford raised your taxes.
Yep.
If you download it to the cities and then you don't compensate the cities for the money that they're going to lose, you raise their taxes. Doug, you're a tax raiser. You have other people do your work for you because you don't want to get those soft hands. But you raise the taxes. You're a liar. You're a liar, and housing is your subject, and you can't even speak to it.
Oh, because he's an idiot to begin with.
He's empty. He's vacuous. There's no substance. There's nothing there.
No.
And he's going to coast his way to another freaking room. Something needs to change in the next 9 days, people. It's like he's even got the open mic moment praising Trump and saying, hey, I'm going to send people to Sparky. None of it is registering. he's so clearly incompetent.
Yeah.
Mr. Grizzly, do we have a show?
We do indeed.
All right, kids and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring, word of mouth is priceless, and you have the mouths from which we want the word to come, so please tell your peeps and poops all about us. Now, if you would like to make sure that you get all our episodes, particularly if you're listening to the audio podcasts and you don't want to miss an episode, you don't have to, thanks to the Ray Girl who sponsors our pod page, podpage.com/the True North Eager Beaver, with a hyphen between each one of those words, or you scan that QR code right there on the screen if you're watching, and that will bring you directly there. And when you click subscribe on our pod page, when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, it comes directly to you. That easy. We like to make things easy for you, unlike Doug Ford. Now, if you would like to support us in other ways, sorry, I just couldn't resist, then maybe you would want to surf on down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page, like Kits Elaine and Kits Cassie, and then maybe you want to tickle our buttons a little bit. Like, share, and subscribe. If you give them a flick, well, we get ourselves all kinds of happy. So thanks so much, and it helps us with the algorithm. Now, if you would like to help us in yet other ways, let's say, for example, you liked the live comment, well, not the live commentary, but the commentary about the debate that I either put up on our Twitter feeds, or you like this show and you want to encourage us to do more because we bring you some deep dives that give you some actual information that you can use to cast a fully informed vote. Well, hey, we won't lick a gift horse in the mouth. We even set up a tip jar for you. It's our coffee page, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word, or that QR code that's there in the corner. And if you want to support us and encourage us to do more, then just leave a little coinage in there, and well, you will earn our undying gratitude, which actually, is worth a lot these days. So, now, if you're not able to contribute financially, don't worry about it, because the gift of your attention and your participation are the gifts that matter the most to us, and we love to hear from you. truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is our email address, and if you are donating to us and like to buy Canadian, you can just send a transfer there rather than having to go through PayPal and not to subsidize the American Tech Bros. But if you want to let us know what you think about the show, that's our email address. Or you can reach us at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge, at True Eager, at The Bad Place, also at True Eager, or our Facebook page, True North Eager Beaver, our original place. And if you happen to be listening on YouTube, well, there's a comment section down below, so let us know what you think. All right? Because democracy is something that you do. There's the Quebec Liberal leadership race. Please study your candidates and find out what you have to do there. If there's still time to buy a membership and you live in La Belle Province, please do. Remember, party politics is where the real action is at. So get your membership and get ready to vote. Ontario Liberal leadership race still going on. Getting ready for the debates coming on the 24th and 25th there, but there'll still be some news and announcements, so pay attention. And of course, the Ontario election, please make sure that you are looking at your candidates. If there's one that you particularly like, offer to volunteer, offer some support, right? Make them, and talk to your friends, get them to come out and vote. We can't do 43% again. Come on. That's not friendship. Right?
Not acceptable.
Not acceptable. From Mr. Grizzly, do you have some words of wisdom?
I don't have words of wisdom, but I do have to share this video clip that somebody sent to me earlier. I don't know if you've seen this or not, but I thought I'd share this with you. This is from the Pearson Airport yesterday.
Yes.
Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Oh, no.
For those who've not seen it, that was the
airplane just crashed into
crashed on landing. Wing clipped the ground and tore off both wings, flipped the aircraft upside down. Thankfully, no one was killed. There was a few critical injuries, but nobody died. And then we have, I'm sure maybe you've seen this footage, maybe you haven't. I'll show you another clip. This is a gentleman exiting the aircraft after the crash. This is from Wu-Tang is for the Children on the Twitter. Yeah, that's the response. I mean,
Yeah.
so yeah, some
I
truly
think I would have
troubling
left out a
footage.
whole. Yeah, I would have left out a whole. I would have let out a whole more myth bombs. That
Yeah.
person was very restrained.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Well, you'd
Wow.
be in a state of shock at that point too, right?
Well, yeah.
So how you respond is how you respond, and you're not sure what response is going to be like. Completely normal response from anybody who'd just been through a plane crash
And flipping on its head.
yeah,
Back,
and
whatever.
survived, right? So yeah.
Jeez. Wow.
Anyway, I thought I would show that
I haven't seen that
because it was pretty crazy.
Yeah. All right. Okay. No words of wisdom from me. I don't have anything for an Easter egg. I don't know if you do, Mr. Grizzly.
No, I was going to save that, and I decided let's just show this, and we'll leave it at that for today. Again, it was a tragic accident, but thankfully no one was killed. Quick acting airline staff, the flight attendants, got everybody off as quickly as possible.
And
Could have been a much more worse outcome.
Yeah, and the commentary all around was that everybody that was on the plane did what they were supposed to, when they were supposed to, and helped each other out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there wasn't that one person who tried to clog the aisle for everyone or something. Or wait a minute, I need to get my suitcase for myself.
No, it was just drop everything, get off the plane.
Yeah. So everybody did as they were supposed to. Way to work together, everyone. Yeah. And thank you to the flight crew. Who certainly did a lot to make sure that everybody stayed safe, because I heard other stories. There were people that had just undone their seat belts or whatnot, and some of the people, boom, hit the ceiling.
Well, this is why they say do not undo your seatbelt until the seatbelt sign is switched off.
Yeah.
Right?
This is why.
I know we're landing, but some landings, I've been in some rough ones. Never one like that, thankfully, but I've been in some rough ones.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Have a beaver-rific day.
Bye.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music.